Namaste, and a very warm welcome. I am your professional security consultant, and honestly, a massive congratulations on acquiring your new commercial property. It's a huge step. Now, you're probably about to sink a ton of resources into what goes inside that building, right? But today, in this custom explainer, we're stepping entirely outside. We are going to architect your ultimate fortress. Because look, your perimeter is literally the first physical barrier between your valuable company assets and a would-be thief. If we get this right, we stop them before they even get close.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the playbook for today's briefing. 1. Mastering defense in depth. 2. Choosing your perimeter barrier. 3. Fortifying against direct attacks. 4. Securing natural boundary weaknesses. And 5. Safe deployment of deterrents.
All right, Section 1. Mastering defense in depth.
Before we even think about picking out a fence or a wall, we have to get our heads around one absolutely paramount philosophy. Time is a thief's worst enemy. And that is exactly why we employ defense in depth, to force them to waste that precious time. I really want you to visualize your facility not just as a building, but as a continuous, impenetrable box. Every single part of it, the top, the bottom, all the sides, doors, windows, they all have to hold equal security value. We build this in very distinct layers. So you start with a formidable outer perimeter. Inside that, you've got your strong building envelope itself. And then, right at the core, an inner strong zone for your high-risk property. This layered setup means an intruder has to break through multiple barriers. It drastically increases their chance of getting caught, and it buys your security team the time they actually need to respond.
Moving right along, Section 2. Choosing your perimeter barrier. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we weigh the tactical choices for your outermost layer. We've got 3 main contenders here. First up, the traditional solid wall. It gives you fantastic security, total privacy, and super low maintenance. But the drawback? High initial cost, it takes a while to build, and yeah, it can become a real magnet for graffiti. Next, we have chain link fencing. It's relatively cheap, goes up fast, and gives you great visibility. But let's be real, its security value is only moderate. It's pretty easily cut or climbed. Plus, rust and overgrown vegetation are its absolute worst enemies, meaning you're going to be doing a lot of continuous monitoring to spot any concealed breaches. Finally, take a look at the steel palisade. This is made of pressed steel strips welded tightly together into a frame, which intrinsically prevents anyone from getting a hand or foothold. Maintenance is impressively low, and while the upfront cost is definitely on the higher side, its deterrence value is absolutely top tier. Now, regardless of which barrier you actually end up choosing, there is a golden rule we have to implement. 6 feet. You must maintain at least a 6-foot clear space on either side of your boundary. This is strictly non-negotiable, my friend. It gives your security personnel a completely clear line of sight, and it totally removes any rubbish, crates, or whatever else an intruder might use to just easily vault over your shiny new perimeter.
Okay, Section 3, Fortifying against direct attacks.
Let's just assume for a second you've wisely decided to invest in a heavy-duty wall for the new property. Well, a standard run-of-the-mill wall just isn't going to cut it against a brute force attack. To hold genuine security value, it's got to hit these absolute baselines. It needs to be at least 8 feet high, with really extensive footings so it stays stable. If you've got a long straight stretch, we're going to integrate buttresses for support. And material-wise, we are talking solid brick, masonry, or cast concrete. Most importantly, that minimum thickness right at the very top has to be exactly 9 inches of brickwork set in cement mortar. Normally, we taper the wall down, meaning the base is even thicker to properly support all that weight.
Right, so what if your wall is exposed to motor vehicles? We've got to protect against ramming. You have a couple of solid options here. You can put in a 3-foot high curb placed exactly 6 feet out from the wall. Or alternatively, you could dig a 3-foot deep ditch placed exactly 3 feet out. But, and please heed this warning, do not place them too close to the wall. If a bad guy can just stand on your curb or balance on the edge of your ditch to hop over your wall, well, you haven't built a defense, you've basically just built them a very, very expensive step stool. Proper spacing is absolutely paramount here. Once we know the structure itself is rock solid, we have to neutralize the climbing threats. This means eliminating absolutely all outside toeholds. So if you've got fancy architectural features that could act as a step up, yeah, those have to be completely reconsidered. To make the top even more hostile, we can deploy spiked rollers, anti-climb paint, or barb tape. But what I really recommend are bird beak sections. These are specifically molded iron or fiberglass pieces that you fasten directly to the top of the wall. They're expertly designed to make climbing practically impossible because they completely remove any viable grip.
Moving right along to Section 4, Securing Natural Boundary Weaknesses. We absolutely cannot ignore the natural layout of your property. I urge you to look really closely at your terrain, because honestly, nature can be a massive liability if you ignore it. First off, your barrier height has to stay constant, above the ground level. So if the ground is uneven or you've got a ditch, the protection has to follow it, leaving absolutely no gaps underneath whatsoever. Furthermore, if you're lucky enough to have water frontage, please do not rely on the water itself as a barrier. That is simply foolhardy. The fence line has to continue right along it. And if you've got a quasi or wharf where ships pull up alongside, we have to turn that fence line inland for the entire length of the dock, or make absolutely sure that any buildings sitting on that dock are fortified to the exact same rigorous standard as your main perimeter wall.
And finally, Section 5. Safe deployment of deterrents.
Okay, let's talk about the final layer of deterrents. Those aggressive overhangs fitted to the tops of fences and walls, like swan neck or concertina wire. Now look, razor wire is an unbelievable deterrent. But as your consultant, I have to give you a very strict warning about your legal liabilities here. If your land sits right next to a public highway, you can't just throw up razor wire wherever you feel like it. If that wire is deemed a nuisance to the highway, which basically means it poses a danger to innocent passersby or passing traffic, you are going to be held completely liable. So we have to install these deterrents strategically and safely. We want to protect your business for sure, but we absolutely cannot create a public hazard in the process.
So we've covered defense in depth, incredibly robust walls, anti-ramming curbs, and even razor wire. But remember what we discussed earlier? All of these physical barriers really just serve one master, and that is time. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to chew on as you survey your new property today. Is your perimeter currently buying you enough time to catch a thief before they ever even reach your inner strong zone? Take a really hard look at your boundaries today, and whenever you're ready, let's start building that fortress.